gentlelady from Hawaii, Ms. Hanabuso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lanard, I'd like to follow up with what the Congresswoman from Guam was speaking about, and that, of course, is the offshore wind development. And you are, of course, in Massachusetts, and I believe she was asking about what about areas, for example, like Guam. In Hawaii, we have wind, of course, but we're on land, and we haven't ventured yet out offshore. Can you tell us how, for example, the NOB would be assisting a company such as yours, because you do say that it's a great development of jobs that you're engaged in, and whether you see this type of activity moving to areas in the Pacific?
The roadmap that the industry needs doesn't exist yet, and because of all the different competing uses in the ocean, we think it's essential that there be coordination among all of those users. I've listed them before. I think it's very important to have this coordination so that we can all find the best places and preferred places to site our resources. The way that I've read the National Ocean Policy and the way that I read coastal and marine spatial planning, there's no definition that I've ever found that talks about ocean zoning. It talks about science-based management and data collection so that we can understand where the best uses are. And when there are conflicting or competing uses, then we need to find a resolution that works for all the parties. As far as Hawaii is concerned, we have one of the sister companies of one of our members is First Wind is a developer in Hawaii on land and working actually to bring a submarine cable, I believe, between two of your islands to make sure that you can have clean renewable energy. You have some of the most expensive electricity prices in the United States. So as far as offshore wind is concerned, I believe that the demand would not be great enough for the investment in infrastructure that would be necessary. We really are looking for areas where we have huge load centers, where we build facilities that are serving several 100,000 homes with offshore wind and balancing that with non-intermittent wind energy sources as well.
Have you looked at, for example, with the buildup in Guam, whether or not you would be able to accommodate Guam's growing need if, for example, it builds up to the capacity that they're looking at?
I'd have to understand more what the load and demand is before I could answer that, and to the Congresswoman from Guam, I'd be happy to work with your office to give you some good data from people who understand that.
Thank you. Mr. Lanard, one last thing. You talk about the fact that there is no zoning per se of the ocean. We've heard about the Magnuson-Stevenson Act, which is something that I'm very concerned about because of the, as you can imagine, fishing is a very critical part of Hawaii. Not only, as the Congressman from Guam said, we have cultural ties, but in addition to that, it is a source of our food. Matter of fact, I was home and was told, and I also would address this to I believe it's Mr. Gilmore, is that Hawaii will use its quota up by October. And we are hosting APEC this November. And our wholesalers have been contacted by China saying, don't worry, you can buy your fish from us. And I find that to be rather more than disturbing, that, you know, we've got a great fishing industry that's, because of the quotas imposed upon it, we're not going to be able to sell our own fish to APEC. When they come to Hawaii, we're going to have to buy it from China. So do you see, for example, a conflict in that area with the NOP?
I actually think the opposite occurs. Mayor Bullard talked about a meeting in New Bedford. I was also asked to come to New Bedford and work and talk with the commercial fishermen there about how to find compatible uses. And we learned a lot in a great several-hour conversation. When I started in this industry, I was a developer of offshore wind farms, 2 different companies, and we started talking about 3-megawatt turbines. We're now looking at 5, 6, and 7-megawatt turbines, which require greater separation between them. So we can imagine wind farms with separation of over a mile apart between the turbines, which gives great access to commercial fishing operations. There are some issues that we're still looking at and working with commercial fishing industries on this, but we are very comfortable that not only do we create greater habitat with these new foundations that don't exist in the ocean for fishing, mostly for recreational fishing. But for commercial fishing, we've learned that their turning radius, their dredges, all of the different types of equipment that they use would be compatible within a wind farm the way we're configuring them. And in fact, we're going to be so wide apart that you could have competing commercial fishermen passing each other within one array of turbines and still have plenty of safety, other than maybe in really major storms, which I hope they wouldn't be out there anyway, but they do that kind of fishing. I'd rather them go every other array in a case like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Gentlelady's time's expired.